way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but free people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations, allows for the construction of these policies and practices and systems and structures that continue to oppress us. This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR roof, don't tune in.
So we have another sad Ashe, Irene Cara has passed away. What was the cause of death of the iconic singer? Irene Cara, a famous 63-year-old singer who had brought great classics to the industry, passed away on Saturday, November 26th. Here, check out what happened to the star. Irene Cara was responsible for many commercial hits and participated in major productions such as Fame and Flashdance. The Oscar winner for Original Best Song got her great fame in the first half of the 80s for being the spokesperson of the main themes of several famous movies. Flashdance, What a Feeling was one of them. She was born and raised in a Puerto Rican family on the outskirts of the Bronx. She was part of several TV shows in the 70s, but was not until the 80s that she reached stardom, when she starred in Alan Parker's musical Fame. There she played Coco Hernandez, a student at a musical academy. The movie was so successful that Cara sang the song of the same name and won the Oscar. This morning, it was announced that the actress, dancer, and singer had passed away at the age of 63. Judith A. Morse, a representative, was one who announced to the world the event and said that it took place at her home, so the star would have been at peace. One of the biggest questions was, what was her cause of death? So far, it is not known exactly what was her cause of death, but it is estimated that it was not something related to age, since she was only 63 years old. The text she published states that the death occurred at her home in Florida and that the cause is unknown and will be revealed when information becomes available. This article will be updated as more information becomes available. And I just clipped up this article today, and there were no updates to her cause of death, but Ashe, Miss Irene Cara.
Yeah, Ashe. What a feeling. Yeah, shout out to that sister, man.
Yeah, gonna live in our memories forever.
Yep. All right. Nigeria to abolish English language in their school system. So let's see what this is about. Nigerian has announced a policy aimed at promoting the teaching of primary school pupils in local languages rather than in English. The new framework, known as the National Language Policy, had been approved for implementation. Education Minister Adamu told journalists on Wednesday, November 30th. In the new policy, instruction for the first 6 years in primary schools will be in the mother tongue. English is Nigeria's official language, and all learning institutions use it as the common language of teaching and learning. However, the education minister says pupils learn much better when they are taught in their own mother tongue. The education minister acknowledged that implementing the new policy would be challenging because it would require a lot of work to develop materials to teach and gather the teachers. Another challenge is the number of languages spoken in Nigeria, more than 600. It's not immediately clear when the government will start implementing the new system.
Well, that's a common sense action for them to take, I think. In Gozi, Fulani, Lady Susan Hussey's race comments were abuse, says charity boss. A Black British charity boss who was repeatedly asked where she was really from at a royal reception has told BBC that the encounter was abuse. Ngozi Fulani was questioned about her background by Lady Susan Hussey, Prince William's godmother, at Buckingham Palace on Tuesday. The late Queen's lady-in-waiting has since resigned. Miss Fulani likened the conversation with Lady Hussey, 83, to an interrogation. The palace described the remarks as unacceptable and deeply regrettable. And a spokesperson for Prince William said racism has no place in our society. The incident has overshadowed the Prince and Princesses of Wales' visit to the U.S. to hand out awards to his Earthshot Prize. Ms. Fulani was a guest at the reception representing domestic violence charity Sister Space when she described Lady Hussey moving her hair to see her name badge and then challenging her repeatedly to explain where she was from. Speaking to BBC Radio 4's Today program, Ms. Fulani said, quote, "It was like an interrogation. I guess the only way I can explain it. She's determined, where are you from? Where are your people from?" End quote. Here is the full conversation as recounted by Miss Fulani. Lady SH, where are you from? I mean, me, Sister Space. SH, no, where do you come from? Me, we're based in Hackney. SH, no, what part of Africa are you from? Me, I don't know, they didn't leave any records. SH, well, you must know where you're from. I spent time in France. Where are you from? Me, here, the UK. SH, no, but what nationality are you? Me, I'm born here and I'm British. SH, no, but where do you really come from? Where do your people come from? Me, my people, lady, what is this? SHO, I can see I am going to have to challenge getting you to say where you're from. When did you first come here? Me, lady, I am a British national. My parents came here in the 50s when, SHO, I knew we get there in the end. You're Caribbean. Me, no lady, I am of African heritage, Caribbean descent, and British nationality. SHO, so you're from, and then that ends the conversation there. Now, personally, I don't feel that there was any wrong with that line of questioning. Where are you? Who you? I mean, I think we all need to start asking these questions.
Yeah, I didn't see any issue with that. I don't just asking people where they're from. I mean,
and why is she being so secretive with the information? Why not just say where you're from? Why all the pulling teeth to get the information?
Yeah, I mean, what she said at the end, where I'm of African heritage, Caribbean descent, and British, she should have just said that right off the bat.
Right, and that would have ended the whole exchange, if you will. So
today's interactive Google Doodle honors Jerry Lawson, a pioneer of modern gaming. Gerald Jerry Lawson, who died in 2011, Ashe, would have turned 82 on December 1st. He led the team that developed the first home video gaming system with interchangeable cartridges, paving the way for future systems like Atari and Super Nintendo. Lawson's achievements were particularly notable considering he was one of the very few black engineers working in the tech industry in the 1970s. Yet, as his children told Google, due to a crash in the video game market, our father's story became a footnote in video game history. Recent years have ushered in new efforts to recognize Lawson. He is memorialized at the World Video Game Hall of Fame in New York, and the University of Southern California created an endowment fund in his name to support underrepresented students wishing to pursue degrees in game design and computer science. Man, shout out to that brother, man.
Shout out Mr. Lawson. I mean, and I, have to wonder what happened to his vision of getting, I don't know if it said getting more black people into gaming, but that really never happened. And this is the first time I'm ever hearing of Mr. Lawson and all of his great achievements in the gaming industry.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember growing up and playing Atari and Nintendo. And
what was your favorite game?
Oh man, I don't really necessarily had a favorite game, but if I can recall, I probably liked Pac-Man. There's another game called Pitfall. That was pretty fun.
So you have the Atari system. I remember we had ColecoVision.
Dang,
yeah, ColecoVision. And one of my favorite games was Cubert. It was called Cubert.
Yeah, I remember Cubert. That's funny.
Did. Yeah.
And then when we upgraded at Nintendo, we had Super Mario Brothers back in the day. And I mean, that's the only one I remember, to be honest with you, playing. But I'm sure we played more than that. But
yeah, well, thank you to Mr. Lawson for, paving the way.
Absolutely.
Okay, Rhode Island's reparation program will allow white residents to apply for funds. The Washington Post reported on Tuesday, November 29th, that a reparations program in Rhode Island will allow its white citizens to apply for access to the funds. Mayor Jorge Alorza approved a $10 million budget for Providence Municipal Reparations Program in November. Quote, folks mentioned all the reasons why it shouldn't be done, and there are a lot of folks, frankly, that thought it would never get done, quote, he told the Providence Journal on November 18th. In August, the Providence Municipal Reparations Commission elected not to issue direct payments to residents. Instead, agreeing to fund different initiatives promoting equity. More than $1 million will go towards home ownership, financial literacy, workforce training, small businesses, grants, and more. Alorza said the program would center on helping the city's Black and Native American residents. However, white residents will also be allowed to access the funding. According to the Post, the latter group will have to meet specific income requirements. Community organizer Justice Gaines told the publication he is concerned about the efficacy of the program. Quote, "This is a short-term response to a 400-year problem because it makes people feel better," end quote, said Gaines. Quote, "My big fear is that there are now white people in our state who could say we already gave them reparations," end quote, he added. Black and Native American citizens make up just 12% of Rhode Island's population. Last year, a 194-page report detailed the city's ties to slavery and its disenfranchisement of indigenous groups. Alorza said the report made the city one step closer to understanding and acknowledging the depth of our history of racial injustice and its unfortunate continued impact on minority communities. In 2021, Evanston, Illinois became the first U.S. city to issue slavery reparations. The historic plan has a $10 million budget. The first phase will see 16 residents receive $25,000 for home repairs or property costs. All right, so I did not hear not one thing about reparations in this article at all. Not Rhode Island's, not Evanston, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Without cash payments, it ain't reparations.
It's absolutely not reparations. And then on top of that, just the lack of, or not the lack, but just the audacity and just the disrespect for not actually focus on lineage-based reparations. I mean, once again, they're mentioning all these other ethnic groups,
including white
including
people.
white people. And it's like, what? Come on, bro.
I mean, just call it an equity program. I mean, just call it what it is. Stop calling it reparations. Like this guy said, they're convoluting the message, and people are going to be like, "Oh, well, you already got reparations." No, we didn't.
It's kind of like the whole affirmative action thing, right? Well, yeah, well, everybody, no, we don't. This does not, that in Rhode Island and Evanston is not reparations. Yeah, good idea. Just call it equity programs.
Equity program and a housing program.
Yep. Final sprint to the Georgia Senate runoff election. Let's see here. Countdown to election day. Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and Republican challenger Herschel Walker are making their final pitch to voters ahead of Tuesday's runoff election. Warnock will participate in a march to the polls in Savannah this afternoon. Walker will make a stops in the Macon area and Valdosta as part of his bus tour. Even with control of the Senate already secured, the stakes are high as Democrats seek to secure a majority outright. More than 1.47 million votes have been cast so far, according to the Georgia Secretary of State's office. Early voting for the runoff ends today. 40% of black voters in Georgia who voted in November have already voted in the runoff. About 40% of black voters who voted in November in general election in Georgia have already voted in the runoff through Thursday, according to an analysis from the data firm Catalyst. More than 1.47 million votes have been cast in Georgia already ahead of Tuesday's Senate runoff, according to the data from the Georgia Secretary of State's office. The share of black voters who have returned to the polls is larger than the share of white voters who have. About 30% of white voters who voted in November have voted in the runoff so far, according to the Catalyst analysis. Yeah, Catalyst is a company that provides data analytics, and other services to Democrats, academics, and nonprofit issue advocacy organizations. By age, younger voters who voted in November are much less likely to have already voted in the runoff. Only 19% of voters 18 to 29 who voted in the first round have come back to the polls so far, while about 34% of voters 50 to 64 and 49% of voters 65 or older who voted in November have voted again. Not surprisingly, almost all 93% of the voters returned to the polls so far voted before the election day in the general as well. There are also about 54,000 Georgians who have already voted in the runoff but who didn't vote in November. Those voters are about 40% black and 44% white, and about 71% of them come from suburban areas. About 29% of them are 18 to 29 years old, while only 19% are 65 or older. These data aren't predictive of ultimate outcomes. In recent years, Democrats have been more likely to vote before Election Day, while Republicans have preferred to vote on Election Day. Early in-person voting in the Georgia runoff ends Friday, which would be today.
Okay, so what do you think? Is it anyone's race based on this data?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, who knows? I mean, they're neck and neck, or they were neck and neck, and that's why that's why Georgia, I should say, not we, but Georgia, to be specific.
We all in the same game. We all in this together. Nah, but so we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's a tight race. A lot of people are surprised that Herschel Walker is such a formidable opponent. All right. Speaking of formidable, we covered this last week that Rep. Hakeem Jeffries was poised to succeed Pelosi as the first Black leader in Congress, and that is confirmed, solidified, one for the record books, the first Black Speaker of the House, Mr. Hakeem Jeffries.
All right, let's go roll that video.
I'm not going to move on because after slavery, Jim Crow, and the rise of the KKK, and the lynching epidemic, and Plessy versus Ferguson, and Black Wall Street in 1921 destroyed. Why? Because Black prosperity was viewed as a threat to white supremacy. So no, we're not simply going to move on. And when the Great Depression struck, African Americans were hit the hardest, and we received the least amount of support. Why? Because yes, Southern Dixiecrats insisted that in the New Deal, African Americans would be excluded, while other Americans were helped. Excluded from Social Security, because most of us were domestic workers, or many of us, and agricultural workers, excluded from Social Security, excluded from unemployment insurance, and excluded from the federally subsidized loans and insured loans that were issued. So between 1934 and 1962, 98% of the federally insured loans that were issued by the federal government were issued to white Americans. That's how suburbs were created. So no, sir, we're not simply going to move on. We're not going to move on because with respect to the GI Bill, more than 1 million African American veterans were systematically excluded from its benefits. When they came back from war, just like everyone else, built the great American middle class. So we're not simply going to move on. We're not going to move on because in the aftermath of the civil rights movement, which effectively ended in 68 and 71 mass incarceration, and the war on drugs started disproportionately targeting African Americans and Latinos. So yes, this is a great country. We've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. We're not perfect, but we're marching to a more perfect union, and that's what HR 40 is all about. The least we can do is study these historic wrongs. That's the least that this Congress can do. I yield back.
All right. So what you were listening to there was his testimony at the HR 40 markup back in 2021. So let's just hope he keeps this same energy in his new position, because it's my understanding that he does have the power to, um, create some movement at the federal level on reparations.
Speaking of reparations, right here in California, looks like the California Reparations Task Force floats 223,000 housing discrimination payment for Black residents. The California Reparations Task Force, a 9-member panel appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom, projects that Black state residents could be eligible for as much as $223,200 per person as part of an effort to redress historical housing discrimination. The number derives from the housing wealth gap Black Californians have allegedly experienced as a result of discriminatory policies in place between 1933 and 1977. The task force estimated that the policies cost Black residents $5,074 per year. The task force passed a motion in March outlining eligibility based on an individual being an African American descendant of a chattel enslaved person or the descendant of a free Black person living in the U.S. prior to the end of the 19th century. Nearly 7% of Californians are expected to qualify for reparations, which suggests the housing discrimination allotment would amount to approximately $569 billion statewide. Some, however, were disappointed with the lineage-based approach ultimately adopted by the task force, since it would potentially exclude Black immigrants, for instance. The motion split the group with 5 voting in favor and 4 against, Cal Matters reported in March. We must make sure we include present day and future harms, the system that folks are advocating for here, where we splice things up, where only one small slice benefits will not abate the harms of racism, task force member Lisa Holder told Cal Matters. Tom Fitton, president of the conservative watchdog organization Judicial Watch, called the proposed payout the nation's biggest restitution ever on Twitter Monday night. The Reparations Task Force was created by Governor Gavin Newsom in the wake of nationwide racial protests that followed the murder of George Floyd in May 2020. Governor Newsom had vetoed a bill introduced into the California State Assembly in September 2022 by Reginald Jones Sawyer, an assemblyman and panelist member, that would have extended the task force deliberations and interviews an additional year until 2024. The move will bring the Reparations Task Force findings to a clear resolution, as it is expected to submit final recommendations by June 2023. Any recommendations the task force presents will have to be approved by the California State Legislature before being enacted.
I mean, that's all nice. $223,000. But you can't even buy a house for under $500,000 in California right now. And, you know, the discrimination that they face when we're looking at housing prices, because I was just on the team working on housing proposal initiatives for this reparations proposals. And in our research, it shows that, you know, in 1964, when the Civil Rights Act was passed, housing in California was going for between $18,000 and $30,000. And now we're looking at, like I said, you can't get anything for under $500,000. And the median price is more like $800,000. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is off by a little bit. You know, maybe they need to do some vouchers instead, or
they need to do something, or they need to. My suggestion is to, you know, just adjust the funding to these 1964 rates when we were left out. Supposed to be getting some equal housing that didn't happen. Dealing with redlining and all that other stuff. I mean, you have to figure if people were still in their homes, they'd be sitting on like $1 million properties right now.
Facts. I mean, we even spoke to a brother down in Los Angeles during our Reparations Now documentary filming I think it was during the Juneteenth festival down there, and he was even mentioning like the skyrocketing prices down there in Bruce's Beach, and you can't afford anything out here in California anymore.
Right, you can't afford it. And when you could afford, you were not allowed to buy, because that's exactly that's who I was thinking of, the guy we were talking to in LA. He was saying that they were trying to buy property in Manhattan Beach and they were not able to do it, so they ended up in one of the redlined black neighborhoods. And he's like, that's lost generational wealth. We would have been in a property worth a whole lot more money if not for the discrimination. So we do have to keep all those things and take that into account. All right, so on the job, as we know, is the California Reparations Task Force, and they do have a meeting coming up soon here on December 14th and the 15th. That's going to be an in-person meeting in Oakland, California at the Oakland City Hall. City Council chambers. So if you're in the Oakland area, the Bay Area, NorCal, pull up. Even if you're not, come from across the state, just try to be there. I mean, this our future is depending on the task force findings. So I definitely recommend that everybody get involved. So that's happening on December 14th and 15th. Mark your calendars. And if you're in the Bay Area, pull up.
It also looks like the task force will begin to refine community of eligibility standards, including residency requirements. That's going to be huge to see who's eligible according to state residency. Task force will be inviting leaders from local municipal reparations efforts from across the state to share their incredible work. From places like Oakland, Los Angeles, Berkeley, Russell City, Palm Springs, etc. And it will be the first time task force members will collectively discuss and begin to determine what types of reparation proposals will be in the final report released June 2023. So yeah, family, this is going to be a pretty monumental meeting, coming up.
What types of proposals would you like to see in the final report?
Wow. Do we have 3 hours?
Just off the top.
Well, yeah, obviously cash. I'm not an economist, but, whatever that number is, cash first and foremost. Land, housing, cultural restoration. That could mean cultural restoration here in the United States specifically, and maybe even cultural restoration in parts of what we now calling Africa, right? Understanding like what happened there. What else? I mean, there's so much that we can go into in terms of proposals. Insurance. We talk about insurance. Business grants. Definitely need that. Obviously, education. Is another one.
Right.
Maybe even building some freedmen schools from preschool all the way up to college. Graduate studies. Etc. So I don't know. Those are a couple of things off the top of my head. How about yourself?
No, good choices. I mean, I think you pretty much covered the gamut. Definitely looking forward to the Freedmen's Agency to help out with putting these making these proposals a reality. But one I thought of, and I know some people deal with it, and I deal with it a little bit myself, is heirs property. And I actually would like to see some kind of agency that can act as a liaison in helping people understand, heirs property. So, people don't lose whatever little bit of heirs property is left in the southern states that they left behind. I know that's an issue with my family, and a lot of the information around heirs property is very confusing if you don't understand the laws and protocols and regulations in these southern states. And it's very easy to lose your land and get the right signed away, or just have it taken for property taxes that you might not even know that you owe. So things like that. I would like to see an agency that helps people in understanding heirs property, because it is a very can be confusing to navigate that.
Yeah. And also, just one more thing before we wrap it up is totally forgot the genealogy. I think that should definitely be something.
Oh yeah, genealogy. That's got to be the first thing. I think we just didn't think of that because as a proposal, just because that we know that has to happen.
Yeah, part of the requirements, right? So
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're looking definitely forward to it, and I think we will probably, most likely, if the universe allows us to. It's gonna go to the next slide here. To be actually there at the task force meeting and streaming it live right here on ETM, in the Mass Media Group, YouTube. Yep. I mean, what are you looking forward to yourself on this one?
Well, from this list that let me just go back to the slide here. Definitely looking forward to eligibility and residency requirements. I actually have some ideas about that myself that I'd like to share with the task force. What else are we talking about? Reparations efforts, the state share, including Berkeley. Yeah. Looking forward to, and what was the last one? First time to discuss to determine what types of reparations. Yeah, I'm just interested to see, the work that they've done on proposals and what the task force is excited to recommend. And again, the task force is in the, what are they calling it? The development stage for these proposals. So if you, the listening audience, has any ideas on what types of proposals you'd like to see, there are no bad ideas here. Drop them in the chat, and we'd be happy to share that information with the task force.
Yeah. Send us an email at etmmediagroup@gmail.com, etmmediagroup@gmail.com, or you can go to the task force, the DOJ website. It's in the link description down there, oag.ca.gov/AB3121. And then you could probably find, I think they have some like email contact that you can email them any of your proposal ideas or any ideas other outside of proposals that you may have.
Yeah, so I see number 2, task force will be inviting leaders from local municipal reparations efforts from across the state to share their incredible work. I see Oakland, Los Angeles, Berkeley, Russell City, Palm Springs on the list. I don't see Sacramento on the list. I mean, they should be, as the capital, here we go, as the capital of California, they should be the first in line to talk about what they're going to do about reparations, and they're not even on the list. So I'm just throwing that out there. Anyone from the task force, if you're listening, I think that you should give our elected leaders here in Sacramento a very personal invitation to come share their work on reparations in the capital city of Sacramento.
Or their lack of. or their lack of?
Yeah, we'll stay on them. We'll stay on them. You know how it is. All right, so I think that's it for In the News.
All right, till next time.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but free people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations, allows for the construction of these policies and practices and systems and structures that continue to oppress us. This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR roof, don't tune in.